Hello everybody, welcome to the channel where a doggo reads you D&D horror stories. In today's episode, we discuss what happens when you bring someone into your tabletop RPG group that has a great sense of self-entitlement. But first, let's roll some classic Lucky footage to pump those likes and comments up. He was such a cute and clumsy kitten. But with that done, let's hop right into these stories. How I left the party even before session 1 because of Critical Role by Reddit user Warhab. This happened about 6 months ago. I saw a post at Looking for Game about newbies searching for a DM. As I usually love teaching new people the game I love, I messaged the poster and expressed interest. They seemed very happy to have found someone who was willing to DM for their group. I was invited into their Discord server, and we had a get-to-know-each-other session. They seemed very nice at first. We talked about my experience as a DM, and theirs as players. All of them only played one session before, because apparently the DM they had then ghosted them afterwards. When I asked them what happened, or if he was a bit weird while holding the session, Fighter and Cleric immediately started bad-mouthing the other DM. They said that he was stingy and didn't let them have fun. Also, his overall DMing style was very bad. When I asked for further details, they said that he didn't let them pick the classes or races they wanted to play, and also had a very boring presentation style. This was a red flag for me, but I was ready to give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, bad DMs are a thing, and maybe he wasn't patient enough for a newbie group. After some more talk about different things, I started to tell them that I would like to run a heavily modified version of Princes of the Apocalypse. It would be a bit railroady in the beginning, but would open up further down the line and become more sandbox style. They seemed fine with it. Then we started character creation. We had a rogue, fighter, cleric, warlock, and a ranger. Everybody seemed happy, and I was too, seeing how pumped they were for the first session. We set it a week later. They were very active in their server, and I saw that they were all pretty hard into Critical Role, which is not a bad thing, but I knew that I had to manage expectations. When the first session rolled around, I said, quote, "Guys, I've seen over the week that you're all pretty heavy into Critical Role. I just want to say that I don't watch it and..." Then I was immediately cut off by Cleric, saying, quote, "You should. It's the absolute best show." Fighter then chimed in, quote, "Yes, you should." I reiterated, quote, "Yeah, maybe someday. So anyway, I just wanted to say that you guys need to understand that Critical Role is a show and not like the real thing. I will try my best to make it as entertaining as possible, but I'm not Matthew Mercer." Rogue replied, quote, "We don't expect you to be. I for one just want to have fun." And I responded, "Sure, I just wanted to be fair, and don't want you all to have unrealistic expectations." Then the cleric mumbles something under her breath. I can't quite remember what. Then Rogue shouted, quote, "What the fuck? Can you stop that shit, Rogue? You always do that." Cleric responded, quote, "How about you just shut up?" After this, a 2-minute screaming match started. I interject, quote, "Yo, guys, what the hell is going on?" Cleric responds, quote, "Just start the damn game already, it's nothing." I then say, quote, "No, I won't start the game when 2 of my players are screaming at each other over something that seems to have to do with the game. So what is happening here?" Then the cleric disconnected from the voice chat. Then the fighter also disconnected from the voice chat. I say, quote, "Okay, what the fuck?" The other 3 then explained to me that I was in fact not the second, but the 4th DM they had found for this group. But every time they had a new one, Cleric and Fighter would criticize them for everything, always comparing them with Matthew Mercer multiple times and demanding the DM give them an experience like Critical Role. They had a talk this time around without me, but the Cleric seemed to not care and just start her usual spiel again. I thanked them for the info and told them that I unfortunately am not ready to deal with this kind of drama, even if Cleric and Fighter don't come back, the damage was done. I didn't feel comfortable with their group anymore, so I apologized and wished them good luck on finding a suitable DM. Ah, the Matt Mercer effect rears its head yet again. Critical Role is a great show, and I'm a pretty big fan myself. But some people need to realize that the cast on it are all professional voice actors, with a DM that has loads of experience making worlds and NPCs and such. And they actually make a decent amount of money doing it. It's well funded and has loads of professionals working on it. Expecting someone to provide that level of game is not just unfair to someone willing to spend their time to DM for you, but also unrealistic. At least in this case, the problems showed themselves before OP would waste any more of their time to this group. Have you ever had a run-in with the so-called Matt Mercer effect? If so, how did you handle the situation? Wondering minds would love to know. Anyway, on to the next story. The time a player brought an entire campaign to an end. By Reddit user Chaos Gamer Girl. I decided to DM a Curse of Straghd campaign a while ago, and invited players that I've played with before. It went decently, and I thought everyone was mostly having fun. The group meshed well, even if the bard stole the show a bit. He pulled the rest of the players out of their shells, so it wasn't completely bad. My players did not want a serious game. They did everything they could to turn it into a dark comedy, and everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time. They were talking outside of sessions and plotting shenanigans. One player started collecting zombie body parts so he could make a museum of cool zombie deaths. Yeah, it was not serious, but everyone was having fun, so I rolled with the dark comedy vibe and played that up a bit. The bard had never mentioned that the game being more of a dark comedy than a horror game bothered him. He hadn't brought up any issues during or after the game, so I assumed that he was enjoying it the same as the others. He lost his mind mid-session though. The party had found the Irina flesh golem and were trying to decide what to do with it. They finally decided that they would add just enough blood to pique Strahd's interest, and fill the rest of the flesh golem with explosives and holy water. The idea was that Straghd, as a vampire, would go and bite her, only to have a holy water explosive bath. The bard lost his shit. He quit the call and left a multi-paragraph message on the server about how this isn't how Curse of Straghd is meant to be played, how idiotic they are for enjoying it, how bad of players they are for enjoying a darkly serious horror game run as a black comedy. He called out all of the players for contributing to that atmosphere, and then left the server. We tried to get back into it, but it fizzled out a few sessions later. The players, most of whom this was their first game, felt guilty, and I couldn't convince them that there was no wrong way to play. Edit. So the problem player outed himself here, and then blocked everyone involved. This means we can't respond to him at all. It's a very mature response, and certainly fits with his record of playing the victim and starting shit. Well, Bard definitely sounds like it was either his way or the highway. I mean, everyone was enjoying themselves, and he had to be the damper that ruined everyone's fun. Sure, Curse of Straghd is meant to be a dark campaign, but that doesn't mean that there can't be different spins on it. Like OP said, there is no wrong way to play tabletop RPGs, as long as everyone is having a good time. And if Bard didn't like the theme or direction things were going, he could have just said something to the DM, and say that this wasn't the game for him, and politely go on his way. But we all know how these stories go by this point. And I did try to look to see the responses from said Bard in the subreddit post, but I couldn't find them, as I think he deleted them. Which is a shame, as I myself, and I'm sure you too, dear viewers, would have liked to see that spiral. Oh well. Let's move on. He did what on the floor? By Reddit user Mesozoic Madness. Hello everyone. This story may seem mild compared to some of the others I've seen here, but it's a story I feel people could laugh or cringe at or whatever. Names are changed obviously, but I'll just get on with it and introduce you to the cast. This story features me, just a player in this situation, Brandon, the DM, Bowie, the problem player, Rogue, another player, and lastly, Paladin, the unfortunate newbie player. So, during the quarantine, we all went into D&D Overdrive. I was planning on being a DM. However, Brandon had an interesting campaign idea in mind. The setting was a somewhat serious one. We would play as level 10 characters, working to take down a big crime organization, either for our own personal gain or for righteous reasons. We were all expected to make characters that would fit within the setting provided. We all agreed that this seemed like a really fun idea and got to making our characters right away. I made a criminal who takes care of business with his guns and violence. Rogue wanted to duo with me, so he was the good cop to my bad cop. Paladin's motivation was a generic one, with pretty simple paladin stuff. This was all fine with us considering he was relatively new to D&D. Then there was Bowie. I have no idea what the concept even was, or what his class was. He just sorta showed up. I don't know why that didn't strike either of us as strange, but we proceeded anyway. It's worth mentioning now that we were playing over Discord. This will be relevant soon, trust me. The episode begins with us on a train, on our way to the main city. It was pretty clear that this was our "you all begin in a tavern" moment. Immediately, we all get into character, and begin feeling out our surroundings. The DM describes a mysterious individual coming up to us as we are talking, and begins to start a problem. We were near ready to engage when Bowie randomly disappears. I can't remember the reason, but not wanting to hold up the game, Brandon describes his, unknown so far, character simply walking to the back of the train. He disappears for so long that we had time to start and end a fight, walk into town, get a lead, and get a place to stay for the night. For reference, this was about an hour and a half. Our characters are settled down in the inn and begin RPing with each other by talking about our motives and such. Brandon states that he has to leave for a moment, so we all take a break and put the game on hold until he gets back. In Brandon's absence, Bowie comes back. We explain what happened in his long absence to catch him up to speed, and he gets mad for some reason, as if it's Brandon's fault that he left. He starts talking a bunch of nonsense about how the DM is railroading us too hard because the DM didn't ask what he would have wanted his character to do in his absence. But how could he? Credit to where credit is due. This DM is commonly known in our group for ridiculous railroading, but that's a story for another time if you guys are interested, and definitely not the problem here. Brandon returns and begins to continue the episode. With Bowie now there, Brandon asked Bowie what he would like his character to do. What came next was the moment that completely killed this seemingly good campaign. Bowie says, quote, "I would like to go to the same inn they're staying in." And the DM replies, quote, "Alright, you enter the inn, and there's a lady at the front desk." Bowie then says, quote, "I want to look her dead in the eye, take off my pants, and begin pissing on the floor." We all just sort of paused, as some of us gave a nervous giggle or two, unsure if he's being serious or not. Brandon chuckles and asks again, quote, "Alright, seriously, what do you want to do?" And Bowie says again, "I pull my pants down and begin pissing on the floor while staring her down." We all try to just ignore it and go back to our RP session, but any chance he got, Bowie would describe how he's not quite done with that action. Needless to say, the rest of the players and I knew he was doing it out of spite, and likely wouldn't stop. The rest of the session is a blur, though all I can recall is his joke never really ending. Mind you, we're not a super serious group, and we do sometimes go on joking tangents, but this clearly wasn't just meant as a joke. It was meant as an insult to the DM. In case you're wondering if we're just being prudes and didn't even bother to ask him, we did. He proudly admitted that he did all of that to derail and ruin the game. We didn't see any more episodes come from that campaign. A real shame too, because the rest of us really liked our characters. Brandon simply didn't want to run it, fearing that Buey would just ruin the second episode. Anyway, like I said, this story isn't as extreme, but still a bad story regardless. For anyone wondering, Buey did eventually get booted from the group for general toxicity. Thanks for reading, folks. I appreciate your time. Edit. Because I'm seeing this question a lot, we did try to encourage the DM to run it again, even offering to roll new characters and pretend like it didn't happen. The DM simply doesn't have the motivation to run the game anymore, and I've since taken over as the group's forever DM. TLDR, we start a new and interesting game, and problem player ruins it by pissing on the floor. Wow, Buey sounds like a right asshole. Getting upset because DM had to go take care of something, even when he himself left for an extended period. No self-awareness at all by the sounds of it. Then to take his undue feeling and try to ruin the game for everyone. Just goes to show how self-centered this douchebag is. I would say that the group did dodge a bullet, however, as he seemed like the type of person to become a that guy with main character syndrome. Though it is a shame that DM didn't feel like continuing with the story, as it did seem like a pretty cool concept. Have you ever experienced a player like this that was so upset about something that tried to ruin the game for everyone out of spite? If so, feel free to vent about it in the comments. On to the last story. Player attempts to manipulate me before the campaign even starts. By Reddit user, The Falconer. I am planning to run a post-apocalyptic campaign with horror elements, so I have some elements I am planning to include to facilitate the horror part, such as a stress system that gives characters a stress point every time they witness something unsettling or suffer a bad wound, etc. A little stress can give your characters bonuses, but too much stress can result in your character panicking, something similar to what the Alien RPG has if you ever played it, but not quite as punishing. I am in the process of gathering players. This guy contacts me and says he's interested in playing, but that he does not like some of the rules that I plan to implement. So I ask him which ones, and what his concerns are. And he starts mouthing off about how he used to be a DM and how my entire system is bad because it takes away the player's agency. Then he starts listing all of the things that he wants to change, and wants to completely get rid of the stress system, saying that the players can roleplay that instead. So I simply thank him for his interest, but if he does not like anything about my system, he does not have to play. I can take his concerns into consideration, but the core rules are not up for debate. Then he sends me this. Quote, "Just a friendly piece of advice as a former DM. If you don't talk to players at all and act as a dictator of rules, no one will play it. Being a good DM is understanding when to compromise and understand your players." This guy assumes from a single 5-minute online conversation that I do not want to talk to my players and that I'm a dictator of rules. Gee, thanks for the unsolicited sage advice, Master. So I reiterate that if he does not like my idea, he does not have to play. I am sure there are plenty of other RPG campaigns out there that would better suit him. This is his answer. Quote, "Okay, Mr. Dictator, DM is not a dictatorship. I tried giving you some friendly advice to save you time, so yeah, I don't need to play. You already fail at organizing." Well, thank you very much, kind stranger, but I am 33 years old. I am pretty sure I can manage my own time just fine. So I pretty much throw him out now. I tell him that I do not want him in my game, because he is displaying manipulative and toxic tendencies. This was his last message before I blocked him. Quote, "Dude, you don't talk to players. You are stubborn, and it's your way or the highway. If it's not your version of the game, you tell people to fuck off." So this guy basically attempted to manipulate me to hijack my game before it even started. Well, I for one think that OP's game idea is pretty cool. Having levels of fear that gives you pluses and minuses really seems interesting. For this potential player to come in and tell OP how he should run his game, before even being accepted as a player is really self-entitled. Then to have a meltdown and call OP names when OP stated that he was not changing his rules. I would say that OP dodged a bullet. Though I do feel bad for any DM that this player eventually joins the game of. Have you ever been in a game where there was a player that had a great deal of self-entitlement? Or threw a cringy hissy fit? If so, be sure to share your tale and how you handled it in the comments. If you have a story that you'd like to be read on the channel, be sure to post it in the comments, on the channel subreddit, or even just at me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and here is some more classic Lucky. Until next time.